Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, we are back at it with another video, and this time it's going to be a topic that I feel like a lot of people have not really thought about for a long time, because the rift between these two games, it grew once Wuthering Waves went into 2.0. Once January 2025 came out, Wuthering Waves took kind of like a giant leap and just kind of left its competition behind. Competition here being namely Zenless Zone Zero. But somebody's decided to rehash some of the older talking points regarding the combat, the differences between those two games, and, well, ask the question, what's the difference between WuWa and ZZZ anyway? And this is the thing. This is obviously a WuWa content creator who has a rover profile picture. At least that's how they're approaching at a baseline. And when they only have this little subs, I don't think they're kind of like a brand name, but the video has a lot of likes and very little dislikes. And so when you have two gacha communities who, tribalistically, have not really liked each other too much, how did you manage to get everybody agreeing over here with this many views? Let's go ahead, let's find out, see what points he has to make, see whether or not he's spitting, and of course, give our takes to somebody that's experienced both of these games, and of course, has dropped one of them.
Two frontrunners of action combat in gacha games. One, commonly referred to as rotation slot, another once hailed as a left mouse button simulator. But from the outside looking in, they look much the same. Three characters, swap between them, flashy units, flashier ults, resource bars, and timer-based endgame. Then you play them and they might feel similar at first, and then you learn them and they start to feel nothing alike. So let's dive into why these games are similar, why they're so different, and where they land in the overall action RPG space.
Okay, I think that's a pretty fair take to make, right? Because both games have kind of like quote-unquote evolved in their gameplay, but a lot of people can view some of the evolutions made specifically by ZZZ as ones that they didn't necessarily like too much. And I think the best example of one of the things that everybody doesn't really like is ZZZ's, I like to call this the condom health bar. That's a good way to encompass basically everything that's miasma and whatever this stupid-ass mechanic, you see it over here. Yeah, it's basically so many bosses in this game will like have an HP bar and then they put this colored condom on it that you have to like break doing some dumb shit in game. And until you do that, they take no fucking damage. And the end result is it's like only certain characters are able to like break the condom. And if you don't bring the right character for this fight, the condom is staying on forever. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? Is that like a fair breakdown of the situation?
What their flaws are and how to solve them. Also that we can answer what should be a very simple question. What's the difference between Wuthering Waves and Zenless Zone Zero anyway?
The main point that I have over here is that the shilling and the restrictiveness is what sets the main two apart for me. And I think he's gonna get into some more technical stuff, so we'll let him spit for sure.
There's a way of describing action games, and really, games in general, which we're going to be using in this video, and that is player-sided versus enemy-sided. Player-sided encounters are the ones where the interesting decisions are about what you do. These exist in games based around the plans you create and your execution.
For example, a game where you can juggle people like a Super Smash Brothers, right? Or, God forbid, like a Street Fighter or something like that. That's very player input oriented. Right? Because you can theoretically, like, chain combo a motherfucker into, like, Infinity and Beyond and deal, like, 90 million% of their damage while they can't do anything. That's what I imagine they're kind of, like, talking about over here.
The enemies in these games aren't the focus, they're the target dummies of varying shapes that you get to beat up in all sorts of spectacular ways. Some games like this which you might be familiar with are Doom, DMC5, and Katana Zero. These are games where the combat is about making you feel powerful. Enemy-sided encounters, on the other hand, are ones where the decisions are forced on you by what the enemy does. Almost every meaningful decision you do is subject to the specific demands, gimmicks, or patterns of the enemy. By comparison, the player toolkit won't be too diverse or powerful. They'll have just enough to handle every enemy in the game, often focusing on a small range of defensive options to allow players to reliably interact with whatever nonsense it is that the difficult enemies are capable of. Games I'd say sit here are ones like the Dark Souls series, Undertale, and Everhood 2.
I think Dark Souls is probably going to be the easiest to understand example for a lot of people, right? You only have like a couple of attacks in that game, right? But they're very basic. They're really like basic, simple attacks. It got a little bit crazy in Elden Ring where they started introducing like weapon arts, and now you can like summon like a fucking sword and then throw like a fireball at people. Like, that's neat too, right? But that's still only like one move, right? That's like in the kit. And you have to end up playing so much differently in between bosses, even though you haven't changed your weapon.
And then there are ones which sit right in the middle. These games are exactly the kind that I personally like. If you've ever played a game where the hard fights feel like a fight between two equals, those exist right here. They're characterized by the interactions between your toolkit and the enemy moveset.
Unironically, card games are an example of this.
And the points where those can intersect and create interesting decisions. Here
Like, just think of, like, Hearthstone or, like, Yu-Gi-Oh! And this kind of, like, falls under here.
exist games like Kingdom Hearts 3, Armored Core 6, and Hollow Knight Silksong. After hearing all that,
I played none of those games.
I'm sure you can start to piece together, if you've played both games, that ZZZ is notably more enemy-sided than WuWa, and you'd be 100% correct about that. However, I'd say both of these games lean extremely player-sided, with...
And you want to know what the enemy-sided part is? Unless you bring the Angels of Delusion, you can't kill this boss. Unless you bring XYZ character, you can't fight this boss. Unless you bring XYZ unit, this boss is invulnerable.
WuWa sitting just even further along that line than ZZZ. And if you're still here, that means that you can handle all of the nonsense that I've been saying so far and me.
That's not true, though. Bringer without Miyabi. Bringer without Miyabi in Deadly Assault. Was that well balanced? Did that feel good for players? Fighting Bringer without Miyabi? Yeah, I give that to you. Okay, good boy. Like, truly, it's that easy to call out ZZZ players. Like, they fold instantly. Like, this is what why do you guys even disagree in the first place when you know it's not true, what you're saying? I don't get it. How is, like, it's that easy to bring one up? It's the first Deadly Assault ever. It was so shilled, you felt like you needed Miyabi. What is true, the other's not. What do you mean? Bro, you're telling me that the Angels of Delusion aren't, like, 99% better than any other team against the wolf guy with the blue HP bar condom? Bro, you're telling me that the Angels of Delusion aren't, like, the best team ever to go deal with the fucking wolf guy who has the blue shield? Or how Hugo, because you actually were supposed to use Miyabi. Hugo doesn't work against the Ice Weak boss because he needed to be Ice and Stun Weak. But this Ice boss can't be stunned, by the way. He can only have freeze on him. This Ice boss can't be stunned, so you can't use Hugo because Hugo's a stunner. He's still Ice, which is weak against, but because it can't be stunned, you can't use Hugo. Those are the restrictions in this game. And if you don't still understand those, you're just a LARPer.
Making up terms for my own videos, which means that you'll probably like all the other stuff I have queued up. So click subscribe and make sure you don't miss out on any of that. So now that we know what kind of game each one is, the question is why even care?
Sanguine Sweeper. Yeah, no, that's the one. So tell me, how's it like fighting the Sanguine Sweeper without the Angels of Delusion? ZZZ players, just put down the LARPing mask for a second. Put down the LARPing mask for a second. Is this guy a fun fight unless you have the exact team you're supposed to have to fight him? Let's stop lying. Just don't lie. Is this a good fight without the Angels of Delusion? Are the Angels of Delusion so much better for dealing with him? It's unreal. Like, they're so much better than dealing with him than any other team or composition in the game. It's almost unreal, the difference. Hoyo makes a boss that's so unfun and so unplayable, and then one team in the game trivializes it. Every time. That's ZZZ's design. Put out more and more increasingly annoying bosses that require all the newest units to clear so that they can pressure you to deploy them just so you can play the game.
Well, the reason is because it lets us unpack why each of these games have evolved in the way that they have. So hold on to that little piece of terminology while we talk about the most fundamental design difference between these two games.
The Angels without their SIGs can't beat him? Wait, so if you have the Angels of Delusions, but you don't have any of their SIGs, they can't beat him? If true, that's crazy. I hope that's not true.
These games both have endgame modes which have a heavy focus on beating bosses within a certain time limit, or in other words, they both check how much damage you can do in a certain amount of time. So of course, the difference lies in what the games use to limit your damage output in that time frame.
How could the game limit your damage output in that time frame? We've already talked about a bunch of methods for ZZZ. Let's see what WuWa's looking like now. So yeah, I've already answered this question in so many different ways.
WuWa uses cooldowns to keep you from being able to hit your maximum output. Resonance Liberations, the ultimates of this game, tend to have a 25-second cooldown on top of their energy costs. Typically, these skills will be important or completely required for a character to be functional. So players will make sure to have enough energy regen on their characters to meet the energy limit every 25 seconds.
Yep.
In addition to ultimates, WuWa's version of a resource bar, the Forte circuit, will grant access to another powerful and typically very crucial skill which the community will refer to as a character's Forte or Forte skill.
There's so many variations of it. Some units activate their forte using another button press. Some use a heavy attack. Some use a basic attack. Some do it automatically without any input from the player. It truly is like the most unique part of their kit, and it's like their special ability. Everyone has like a different implementation of it.
These abilities tend to also have some manner of internal cooldown, usually between 20 and 25 seconds, to line up with the ultimate cooldown. Evidently, this is to keep the amount of powerful actions you can do within a 25-second window consistent, no
Exactly. A set number of moves that you can do.
matter how good you are at the game. ZZZ on the other hand gates you on resources. There isn't as standard of a formula here as WuWa has with their cooldowns. Resources will be accrued in differing ways per character. Some gain it from using their specials, some from dodging, many from attacking in some form. But really, almost all of them will be gained from what the character wanted to be doing anyway. These resources just give you a line of optimization you can take during combat to optimize your damage. When you compare these two philosophies, there's at least one clear difference you can intuit in how you expect to deal damage, even without playing either game. Enemy interference inherently matters more in the cooldown game when the cooldowns are tight, and matters much less when the cooldowns are lenient. Often in WuWa, the rotations are pretty tight. Doing all of your obligatory unfield tasks with a team will often bring you close enough to the 25-second mark that enemy disruption can feel pretty bad.
That's kind of like the point. The real difficulty of Wuthering Waves stems from... Think of Wuthering Waves like this. Wuthering Waves is like running down a track, doing a 100-meter sprint as fast as you can. And you set a certain timing, right, for how fast you can do that 100-meter sprint. The end game is like you're sprinting, trying to maintain that pace, and someone's like throwing objects at you while you're running. And your goal is to basically maintain as fast of a time as possible while all this shit is getting thrown at you. And that's basically what it is. That's the enemy attacking you. You're trying to, like, you know, work through and get as close to that baseline time as you can with all this shit going on.
Since every second wasted is damage that you can't get back. If the timer runs over while you're halfway through your rotation, unfortunate, but that's a big damage loss. In ZZZ by comparison, not only can you adjust how you spend resources to always make sure that you have spent what you've built, the game also tends to directly reward you for interacting with disruptive mechanics. Whether that be bonus points in Deadly Assault, gimmick phases that directly refund energy, or mechanics that rapidly build the enemy's stun gauge. That asymmetry is why WuWa is often known as rotation slot. So, let's talk about that game for a little.
Wait, let me hear what the asymmetrical part is again.
Directly reward you for interacting with disruptive mechanics. Whether that be bonus points in Deadly Assault, gimmick phases that directly refund energy, or mechanics that rapidly build the enemy's stun gauge.
Yeah, okay. So, basically, what he's talking about over here, and I'm gonna be honest, bro actually just showed possibly the 5 most cancerous mechanics in ZZZ history, and kind of used it as like a plus for the game. Let's just review all of the mechanics that he showcased over here as like this...
By comparison, not only
all of this asymmetry as like a plus to ZZZ. Let's see what we put on here.
To always make sure that you have spent what you've built. The game also tends to directly
miasma. We're glazing miasma.
Reward you for interacting with disruptive mechanics. Whether that be bonus points in Deadly Assault, gimmick phases that directly...
We're glazing this guy. This is Yi Shungite's brother. You guys remember this boss? This was dog shit. Basically, he's kind of going through and showing off the worst fights in the game and the worst mechanics in the game that the community has universally hated. And this is the thing, right? I don't actually know if it's glazing, but when we're kind of like not pointing out that these are the worst fights ever, as we mentioned them, I do think that's a little... It seems like we're being a little too fair to ZZZ. Because we're basically showcasing what 90% of players fucking hated. That was bad. Not good. Bad for the game.
Refund energy, or mechanics that rapidly build the enemy's stun gauge. That asymmetry is why WuWa is often known as rotation slot. So,
but maybe he's gonna get into why they're bad later.
Let's talk about that game for a little. A cooldown-based economy under strict time.
So think about it this way. Those mechanics are cancer. This is us basically like talking about HP inflation. And saying, yeah, this is the developer's attempt to make their endgame more of a fulfilling experience for their players. Instead of talking about, oh, HP inflation is being done to power creep the old units and sell newer characters, right? Do you get how the messaging is different?
Timer means that the end goal of WuWa is cramming the maximum damage you can into a desired window. That's a puzzle you often solve before the encounter. Ensuring you can create a rotation that deals enough damage, practicing it to the point where you can perform it consistently, and then executing it cleanly in the fight. In
his defense, you should just be neutral. Yeah, and if you're taking something that's objectively fucking awful and like a terrible cancer mechanic and you're not talking about how bad it is, that's not neutral. That means that you're giving ZZZ a lot of extra, like, good faith for not really any reason.
Primary endgame modes, there aren't really that many choices to make. And the reason that's true is because WuWa's kits and teams can be quite particular. Every character has a concerto bar, which you can think of as a side quest you can...
He is neutral, which is why this video wasn't review bombed. No, he's not being neutral here. This is what being neutral would be. It would be him pointing out that these mechanics, even though they are interactive, are like objectively some of the worst received mechanics in the game's history. Where players all hated it, they caused like terrible things for the game, and it was like super bugged and not fun to fight against. That would make it neutral, because you're just telling the truth about how those mechanics were received. So to simply mention them and then not talk about how awfully they were received by the players is not being neutral.
Complete during their time on field, and finishing it lets you swap.
It's omission. That's not neutral. Guys, this was, I mean, it's very easy to find an analogy for this. You bring on a guest speaker, and then you just intentionally don't talk about an active criminal trial that the guest speaker has for, like, fucking embezzlement or some shit. Like, bro, they're currently wanted for embezzlement in another state, and you just don't mention that as they go up for their guest speech. You're not being neutral. Not talking about it doesn't mean you're neutral. It means that you're hiding the information and, like, portraying it in a way that makes the person look better when they've done a bad thing, and that's what he's doing with this game. And I'm saying that's how it gets introduced.
Part with a payoff called an outro skill.
And didn't Trash talk? Because they didn't talk about all the other stuff Hassan's up to. Didn't Trash Talk get a lot of shit for not talking about what Hassan's been doing? So why can't I give this guy shit for not talking about how bad the things he's bringing up for ZZZ are? Just play the damn video, then stop saying retarded shit in my chat.
That much is fine. The problem is that a lot of characters...
Like, yes, when you say dumb shit like him being neutral when it's objectively not true, then yes, I'm gonna respond to it because you're typing retarded shit in my chat, bro.
Add extra conditions on top of that. For example, buffs that disappear if you swap a character off field, or resources that are locked behind rotating in a specific way. Stack enough of those together and the 25-second window stops being the only constraint you're playing around. Almost every character is imposing micro goals on their own rotation, and sometimes on other characters too. Which is why a WuWa fight that starts going wrong is so annoying to pull back.
It compounds. And I think the best example of this is when you run into ER issues because you missed an attack. Yeah, that makes it the most obvious, but it's also like immediate feedback that there was probably something wrong with what you're doing. And I will also say this, though. This guy is really bad at this game. I don't know how you got 4,300 points with Iveth. Maybe... Oh, Saint, you can't look at the B-roll. Saint, stop looking at the B-roll. Why are you critiquing his B-roll? If somebody's getting 4K with one of the best teams in the game, I'm going to assume they're not very good at the game. Like truly, it's just, and this is the thing, you don't want to showcase gameplay of you not doing good. When you're trying to speak as an expert on the end game and its mechanics, and you're showing gameplay where you suck. Can we just, is that truly a point that we need to contest right now? Like, bro's showcasing him sucking ass as he talks about the end game and describes the mechanics. I'm sorry, it's not a good look.
Watch pretty much any level of play, and the moment someone gets meaningfully disrupted, they'll just restart. Accidentally outro to the wrong character, lose a buff for taking too long, or swapping when you...
He might be demonstrating bad gameplay on purpose, though, but maybe he is. He's using the baseline buff. He's using the not negative status one.
You shouldn't have. For most players, it's just not worth salvaging. And to be clear, you can recover a rotation gone wrong.
He's not using the negative status token, no.
WuWa. It's just, why would you? The restart button is right there. You spend all that time learning the rotation, and you know it works. Why sit there improvising around the character's kit and...
Analysis video, not guide making video. Okay. How about this? I make an analysis video about the best type of shoes to wear for athletes. And then you see me and I don't have legs in real life because I'm an amputee. How would you take that video? If I'm making a video talking about how shoes... And you see that I don't have legs. Just wondering, would you take my take very seriously? This is a guy talking about the end game and like the technicalities and the specificities, and he's showing him doing 4K clears with a triple premium Imeth team. It's not a good look. I'm just saying that. If you're talking about the brand or what to do with the shoe, okay, you're getting a week, buddy.
In order to barely clear, when the rotation you picked up from the guide does the job every single time. Hence, rotations of the slot variety. Now that's enough wuthering our waves for now. Let's do a little talk on ZZZ's kit design.
So, this is truly where stuff gets very, very, very funny. I want to replay this last piece over here about the rotation slot. Let's play it from 7 onward.
character, lose a buff for taking too long or swapping when you shouldn't have. For most players, it's just not worth salvaging. And to be clear, you can recover a rotation gone wrong in WuWa.
Yep.
It's just, why would you? The restart button is right there. You spend all that time learning the rotation, and you know it works. Why?
So this is the thing. This is basically us saying, looking up the guide online on how to play the character is the only way to play this game. And if that's the approach that you want to take, yes, this is kind of the conclusion that you'll come to, right? But let me simply just introduce you to this thing called playing the fucking game. This is going to be wild. I'm about to show you a rotation that people found out for a character called Hiyuki, who actually, like, just, you know, recently got released. And this one might blow your mind. This one might blow your mind real fast. I'll show you a couple of the rotations that I made up around new character releases for fun. And this is an example of one of them. Before, when you were playing this character, this is what would happen when you use your ultimate. Get ready for this. Right? To fill up and get all your Yai attacks, you would do some weird shit like this. Both your skills, and then spam your basic attacks, right? And then get your Yais that way. That was technically the fastest way to do it. Right? On release. Then people played the game and, like, played her more, right? And realized, wait, you can do this instead.
Your days are numbered.
So watch this.
Take your final dive into none.
And that's like 30 times faster. But people found that out from playing the character and just using her on release. Then you got this mechanic as well. And this is the thing, right? Quick swap is something that truly makes this game different, right? Because quick swap isn't just you going insane with 3 characters and going spastic, right? With 5 inputs every second. This can be quick swap too.
Pivotal moment. Inferno. Darn it.
You can quick swap like that as well, just between 2 characters. And I kind of like fucked it up over there, right? But that's the point. You're allowed to think outside of the box and actually approach the game in any way you want. And you're gonna notice over here, right?
Structural integrity intact.
Okay, yeah, no, this is not really. You can try. Okay, I'm gonna get a video. I'm gonna get a video of it. You want to ensure that, like, your Chisa swaps off during 2 key moments. And these are the key moments over here. Not here. But basically, you want to swap off during this with the scissor chop. So you can see she got that one, right? Over here. And then over here. And those are the 3 main ones you want. There you go. There you go. That looked a lot better. But that is, guys, the type of stuff you're allowed to do in this game to speed up those rotations, right? Make use of, like, various opportunities, blah, blah. You don't need to do some crazy Wallenstein shit where you're tabbing between 3 characters every half second, because that works too. And then you just do a regular rotation on Yang Yang. And so that's the stuff that I'm talking about, right? When it comes to experimenting, trying out things yourself. If you only do what a website or a guide prescribes to you and tells you to do, then yes, 100%, absolutely, it will be rotation slop, because you're intentionally making it rotation slop by forcing yourself not to do anything else differently. And this is the thing. Most people are going to play the cookie cutter method. Why? Because it's the cookie cutter method. It's the most common one. No, it's not bad that something is cookie cutter. You want to know what the cookie cutter beverage is? Water. That doesn't make water bad, motherfucker.
I sit there improvising around the character's kit in order to barely clear, and the rotation you picked up from a guide does the job every single time.
Exactly, right? People simply don't feel the need to go above and beyond because you don't need to, because the end game isn't retarded in this game. Imagine that you don't need to quick swap to clear the end game. That's basically what is going on over here. You can use basic, simple baseline rotations that are easy to understand for a majority of the player base. Use that to clear the end game, and there's no need to go above and beyond and go to that sweaty level to clear. That's the same for ZZZ, though. Both have some sweaty shit. No, this is not the same for ZZZ because, as we just said, you don't get to do this unless you pull the newest character in the newest team. If you're not doing that, then no, get ready to quick swap with everybody else. That's basically the point. Is in WuWa, basically all the teams that get released work against all the bosses equally, unless you're fucking, like, resistant. ZZZ releases enemies, bosses, that only 3 units in the game can beat. Why?
Hence, rotations of the slop variety. Now that's enough wuthering our waves for now. Let's do a little talk on ZZZ's kit design.
So basically, rotation slop is simply a result of basic rotations clear the content, so you don't need to do above and beyond to clear. And so ZZZ players have managed to turn Kuro not fucking up the game's balance and making Giga Shield enemies into some sort of shot against the game. Because this is the take. If you can't clear with basic rotations, unless you use the newest team that costs $1,000 fucking and only gets this one boss, is that good game design? ZZZ players will somehow tell you it is.
ZZZ, having come a long way from being considered a button-mashing game, to me, this game is more of a resource management simulator. A resource-based economy means that the bulk of the skill in piloting a given team comes from understanding how to efficiently build and spend resources in order to maximize damage.
It's a button-mashing simulator. The reason why is because it takes so many fucking clicks to do anything in this fucking game. So many fucking clicks to do anything in this fucking game, and like the end result is you're mashing buttons until like you have enough energy to do something, then you're casting the energy, then you're switching to another character, smashing buttons again until you have enough energy again. You gotta press a lot to play this game, and it's legitimately tiring.
To talk about this effectively, we need to split the teams we'll be piloting into 2 different team types in ZZZ, anomaly teams and attack teams.
Maybe you want to call it resource slop for now, but basically, you just have to do the most mindless shit ever until you get the resource that you need. You can get it from somewhere, right? Dialin, you're mindlessly spamming until you have the bar so you can get the free ult. Yizhuan, you're mindlessly spamming until you have enough to cast both your ultimates.
Let's start with attack teams since they're easier to explain. These teams typically have a couple of properties in common. They often aim to stun the enemy and deal a huge burst of damage within that stun window. Stunning an enemy in ZZZ applies a large multiplier to all damage that they receive, so aiming to line up your resources within the stun window
Terrible mechanic. You wanna know why? I own Hugo.
is the most efficient use of your resources when you can afford to do so.
The worst mechanic ever conceived because the devs had no idea what they're doing with stun or like stun windows or how to balance it properly. They added bosses to the game where their stun window is half a second long. You just heard an attack team described, right, as like one that deals all its damage during the stun window, and some bosses have a stun window that's half a second. Because they're just designed in a way where they don't get stunned, and stun does nothing against them. And it's just like, hey, you're not allowed to use stun characters against this guy.
Runs will often aim for a number of stuns to allow the resources you build to be spent
It's so disgusting. And I love that he's showing Hugo now because you know nobody else has this fucking rare
a
footage,
certain
bro.
amount of times. Second, these teams usually devote a vast majority of their field time to one character. Either a DPS with an off-field stunner so that your attacker may build the resources and then spend them during the stun, or an on-field stunner with a burst attacker who comes on-field during the stun window to deal damage. The latter is
So you're smashing buttons on a character until you have the resource you need. Then you switch to the other one and you just smash buttons on them until you... That's kind of like the thing. The amount of APM required for this game truly is not worth like the actual numbers that you see on the screen. And I think that's where a lot of people get the whole like button mashing take from, is you do so many attacks that literally don't do any damage. Like basically every single one of Miyabi's attacks, right? That isn't a skill, and every single one of her attacks that isn't, you know, like her charged down heavy attack slashes or her ultimate, they don't do any damage. Literally none. And so you're just sitting there spamming them over and over and over again, watching some pretty cool animations, but nothing's actually doing damage outside of like 3 key abilities. But you see all these VFX, it's like VFX animation damage slop, where it's a whole lot of meaningless nothingness, but it's trying to look like really cool. But how cool can you make attacks that are dealing 0.1% of the damage of the enemy's HP bar?
is less common, but both will have a support, who is mostly a cheerleader, who provides buffing to the rest of the team. And that's it really. Attack teams vary a lot in how they end up playing. Even what I just told you doesn't really apply to every single one.
Can you say the same about Imeth? Yes, and I've made very public critiques about me not liking Imeth's kit. Like, I've said so many times, I hate her normal attacks so much. Like, that her normal attacks are literally the worst feeling part of her kit because they do literally nothing.
But in general, these are the most standard teams. An example is Yishen, Jufufu, and Lucia. Yishen will be greedy with her field time in order to build up as much resources as she can.
You're just smashing buttons on the...
She benefits from a more selfless stunner, so Jufufu will take the role of an off-field stunner, while Lucia provides the buffs. The other...
Basically, you go onto Lucia, you press E, you go onto Jufufu, you press E, and then you spam on Yi Zhao for 20 fucking minutes until you have all your shit, and then you just cast your abilities. Like, I mean this in the most genuine sense possible. Like, this team is, like, kind of disgusting, because that's, like, actually what you do. You just cast both the off-field people's buffs, and then just spam shit on her until the enemy dies. I'm not joking.
The other half of the roster is anomaly teams. I won't run through the entire system here, but it functions as a completely different win condition available to a certain...
Well, that's what happens when you use the off-field stunner with the off-field support. You only have one person on field. It's not like you can do anything with anybody else. Like, you can't use anybody else on the Jufufu, Lucia, Yizhuan team. You can't.
class of character. Instead of stunning and bursting, you're stacking an elemental effect on the enemy until it triggers, and sometimes chaining those triggers for damage. So the moment-to-moment goals vary from an attack team, but it's built on the same type of logic where you'll build a team to allow for all of your characters to gain the resources that they need to accomplish the goals of their kit.
Anomaly characters are probably the most fun in the game because they're very hard to fuck over balance-wise. Like, the only way you can, like, fuck over anomaly teams is to, like, put in a buff where it's like they don't have any anomaly buildup. Like no anomalies don't do fucking shit to them. Because it's kind of just like, this is like a team where it's just like, you go on, and then everything can deal damage. And this goes against the, like, bullshit I was talking about before. In this team, an anomaly team specifically, right? I know Miyabi kind of counts, like, not sort of, right? She's more of like an attack character, even though she is anomaly, right? We know Miyabi. In the anomaly teams, you're like building up the bars and stuff, and then you see your attacks build up the bar, and then you get the visual feedback. Once you built up the bar, a burst of damage. So they, in general, just feel a lot more satisfying than other teams in this game because everything you actually do actually does something. What do stunners do? Oh, they build up the stun bar, but stunners' attacks do 0 damage. They build up the stun bar, but then they do 0 actual damage. Anomaly characters, on the other hand, they do a little bit of damage while they're attacking, and then they also, of course, melt down the HP once their bar is full, and it's like good feedback. And I think that's why these are the most popular in the game. That's why people generally just go for anomaly teams, and that's why they'd only mainly release anomaly characters for like the first part of the game, because it was the only thing that actually felt good.
So now I've spoken about the player side of things, so let's talk about the enemy side. To do so, let's talk about Dark Souls. Or more generally, let's talk about the wonders of looking at your screen. I mentioned player side and enemy side games before, and now we can try to see what that framing is supposed to help us understand. So to start, I'm going to ask a silly question here. What is the point of there being different enemy types in games? Why even bother spending dev time on it? Well, when we look at any action game, the answer is clear as day. They provide different challenges for us to go up against. It would get boring if we just fought the same ones, need different movesets to go up against. Stuff with different strengths and weaknesses to encourage us to use different underexplored parts of our toolkit and get us to think in different ways.
And that's the thing. Having different strengths and weaknesses is fine if you don't need to buy the characters to exploit those weaknesses.
Even in games with more limited player options such as Dark Souls and more...
Imagine if Elden Ring had, like, restrictions where to beat this boss, you need to go buy a weapon of this element, but that weapon costs $10. So it's like, unless you pay $10 to buy this special lightning sword, you gotta go grind for 5 hours to get enough levels to beat the boss. That's ZZZ, bro. I'm not fucking joking.
Generally Souls-like game.
I'm not joking. That is basically ZZZ.
The enemies being different provides a unique challenge with each encounter, requiring you to learn different tells, timings, and punish windows in order to progress. Okay, cool. Great answer. So if that is the case, why design a player-sided game in the first place? Well, to answer that, we're going to need to expand upon an inevitable friction that both of these games have come to face, and the differences in how they've tried to handle it.
Basically, WuWa also at the moment. Wotads, thank you for bringing that one up because you've just given me a free dunk. So, we have ZZZ Defender, Wotads over here, right? This one's not going to be crazy. He's saying that the restriction I just talked about, right? Buy this $10 lightning sword or you can't clear is the same as WuWa. This is what Wotaz is talking about. Basically, we have in WuWa a 15% all attribute resistance debuff that gets removed if you apply any of these things on the enemies. And once you do that, right, the stage becomes much more manageable and easy to clear. Let me show you all the characters that are able to remove that debuff out of the most recent ones released. We're going to go all the way back to November of last year. We're going to go back to November of 2025, almost a full fucking year ago, and look at how many of the characters get rid of that buff. And this just makes Wuthering Waves look better. So basically, Shisa clears it, Lene clears it, Imith clears it, Luke clears it, Hiyuki clears it, Denya gets rid of it, Rebecca gets rid of it, Lucy gets rid of it, Lucilla gets rid of it, and Yang Yang gets rid of it. 10 of the last 12 units released in this game get rid of that buff.
Come on.
While ZZZ releases bosses where one team in the game beats it. We also have free characters
I will be there for everyone. As we head, I will be...
that get rid of the buff too.
Tell me, what bothers you?
So it's like... it's not even close.
Here is the tension every single one of these games runs into. A player-sided game makes you feel powerful, and feeling powerful is exactly what a gacha wants to sell you. You pulled the character, you invested in the character should feel good.
ZZZ does the opposite. They make you feel weak unless you pull the newest character. He brought up a great point. Gachas, they oftentimes want to make you feel strong unless, like when you pull somebody. ZZZ makes you feel weak unless you pull.
A fully enemy-sided game sells the opposite thing. It sells you an uphill battle against something bigger than you. It makes your skill and your understanding matter most. And in gacha,
HSR and Genshin really make you feel weak. I think that is the true thing. WuWa makes you feel strong when you pull Imith, when you pull Sagrika, when you pull these units, when you pull Yang Yang right now, you just feel strong. In ZZZ or all these Hoyo games, you feel really fucking weak if you skip units.
fundamentally needs your account to matter. So there's a hard ceiling on how enemy-sided one of these games can ever actually go, no matter how many different enemy types they sit down and try to design.
So, are you guys beginning to see now all the things this guy isn't talking about in his piece? I see why this has so many likes. He just didn't say the truth about ZZZ.
But somewhere along the line, clearly the ZZZ devs heard that the game was too easy, and they clearly, genuinely love action games. So they started pushing ZZZ in a more enemy-sided direction.
His place is not supposed to be bashing either game. We started off by calling WuWa rotation slop and ignoring that quick swap's in the game, and then we're out here glazing ZZZ and not talking about... If we can say that WuWa's rotation slop, bro, how are we not talking about ZZZ and its fucking any of its problems? We called WuWa rotation slop like 3 times. And yet we have not said a single negative thing about Zenless Zone Zero once the entire video. He's scared of the toxic positivity and getting downvoted. No, that's it. This is one of the most biased reviews I've ever seen.
Gimmick phases, more aggressive enemy type.
Straight up. You can't just ignore everything bad with the game. Trash Taste got shit on for bringing on Hassan. This guy should get shit on for covering ZZZ in this way. And I don't mean shit on in the terms of cancel him, but just like shit on for the perspective of why is there no actual mention of ZZZ's problems in here? It's been 12 minutes, right? And I have not heard a single actual critique for anything in ZZZ, but WuWa's been called rotation slop 3 times. We even gave an in-depth explanation for why WuWa's rotation slop. But we're not going to point out ZZZ shilling. We're not going to point out that you need specific teams for certain bosses. We're not going to point out that, like, how the shields work and how they're super toxic. Not going to point out rupture...
modes that ask you to do more than just damage. And in doing that, they ran into a problem.
You would think ZZZ is perfect watching this video. I see why ZZZ players recommended it so much. It's a pure glaze vid.
Because a large part of the way that
Just appealing to ZZZ players by actually lying through omission by not talking about any of the game's issues, but being forefront about WuWa's.
they'd been reducing the friction of the game, which is
Ah, man, you really... What? Did you really think I was going to have any other reaction to this? I'm just wondering. People, ZZZ players that non-sarcastically sent me this, did you think I was going to agree with this vid when it's presented in this biased of a way?
important for gachas. The way they'd been allowing every single player to access their character's strength was by making them streamlined and easy to play, and also handing out an enormous amount of invincibility across the cast. Without even mentioning egregious characters like Yi Sheng-guan, a lot of characters have minimal reason to be getting hit during combat. And here's the issue with that. Enemy-sided design lives and dies by how you get to interact with the enemy kit. And you can't interact with an enemy kit while you're invincible. So they couldn't just generically make enemies more scary because half the cast just doesn't care. They needed a way to make the game more enemy-sided, but they also needed controlled interaction. And that is where I think basically every recent ZZZ mechanic comes from. Hence the side objectives of Deadly Assault, hence Miasma, control skills, and the list goes on. And you'll notice that the center of a lot of these mechanics is defensive assist. And it's worth thinking about why that specifically is the answer that they're relying on. The easy answer is that it's the easy answer. The devs know exactly what they're handing you. Almost, emphasis on almost, everyone interacts with it in almost the same standardized way. It makes the game more enemy-sided without ever opening up the game to being unpredictable.
I try to be fair about this take over here, because I definitely did see, I think for the first time in the fucking video, some level of recognition of like what ZZZ is doing wrong. Like I caught something. I caught one thing, and it's halfway in the video. Let's try to listen for it again.
So, the devs know exactly what they're handing you.
I think I might need to restart this section.
Somewhere along the line, clearly the ZZZ devs heard that the game was too easy, and they clearly, genuinely love action games. So they started pushing.
Like, this is the thing. We had 11 minutes, and he himself recognizes this is fucking dog shit. But it's just, how are we so scared to just say it's bad? Like, he's recognizing it's shit, yet we never mentioned that it's shit. It's such a, I don't get what's going on. Like, do you get what I'm saying? Even he knows it's not good. He saves any critique until 11 minutes in because he knows he's gonna get brigaded. Now I get it. He knows what's going on. Because I know what's going on. He knows the ZZZ community will brigade the fuck out of him, so he's like hiding the critiques in the video. And they're so stupid they didn't notice them. Dude, this is how sad this community is, bro.
Clearly, the ZZZ devs heard.
He can call WuWa rotation slop in the first 5 minutes and spam that shit, no issue. No hate from the WuWa community. Bro's out here hiding his ZZZ critiques.
That the game was too easy, and they clearly, genuinely love action games. So they started pushing ZZZ in a more enemy-sided direction. More gimmick phases, more aggressive enemy types, more modes that ask you to do more than just damage. And in doing that, they ran into a problem, because a large part of the way that they'd been reducing the friction of the game, which is important for gachas, the way they'd been allowing every single player to access their character's strength was by making them streamlined and easy to play, and also handing out an enormous amount of invincibility across the cast.
We've kind of already established this, and this is where he fails to bring up one of the worst points ever.
Without even mentioning egregious characters like Yi Sheng-guan, a lot of characters have minimal reason to be getting hit during combat.
That's like just the Void Hunters. Like truly. He's not even talking about, I guess, the issue of this only the Void Hunters are playable. Because we're out here talking about how absurd mechanics like this are. Are we gonna mention that only the Void Hunters get like these iframe mechanics where they can just ignore everything and then everyone else on the roster is told to go fuck themselves, and so you don't pull anything except Void Hunters in the game? Are we gonna expand on that point? Because he's kind of like getting there, but like the fact he just won't go in on it is why I'm just like, I don't know what's going on.
Enormous amount of invincibility across the cast.
Guys, what if you're not a Void Hunter and you're trying to deal with this shit? I'm like I literally looked at this laser and I was like, what if I wasn't a Void Hunter? What do I do if I'm not a Void Hunter here?
Ability across the cast, without even mentioning egregious characters like Yi Sheng-guan.
What do I do if I wasn't Yi Sheng-guite there?
A lot of characters have minimal.
Dodge it? I'm not doing damage then, right? Oh, you guys got played. She's dealing damage while being invincible. You're saying so other characters don't get to deal damage, but she does. And she also deals the most damage in the game because she's a Void Hunter. So the Void Hunter gets to damage through enemy attacks while also dealing the most damage in the game, while everyone else is told to just go dodge.
Enormous amount of invincibility across the cast.
She's in the laser, by the way, but taking 0 damage. She literally teleported, ran through the laser like she's a fucking, bro. It's like one of those scenes, bro, in like those animes, bro. She was like cutting the laser with her sword, bro.
Without even mentioning egregious characters like Yi Sheng-guan, a lot of characters have minimal reason to be getting hit during combat.
And then ZZZ players will tell you with a smile on their face, yeah, just go dodge on other units, bro. Literally don't deal damage.
And here's the issue with that. Enemy-sided design lives and dies by how you get to interact with the enemy kit. and you can't interact with an enemy kit while you're invincible. So they couldn't just generically make enemies more scary because half the cast just doesn't care.
Is he going to get into how it's troubling that only half the cast has these iframes? Not everybody. And so imagine the experience if you're somebody that doesn't have iframes out the wazoo and you're designing bosses designed for characters that do have iframes. Guys, it's kind of like this. Iframes getting shat out of your kit essentially means there's like a baseline of like survivability and just like interaction the enemy needs to have to actually be a challenge. And if you're designing bosses for characters that are 90% iframes, then what are the characters that are 20% iframes, 30% iframes? What are they going to deal with? How is their experience going to be if you're designing bosses for those who have 90% iframe kits? What does the 50% guy deal with? The 40%, the 30, the 20? You don't use them.
They needed a way to make the game more enemy-sided, but they also needed controlled interaction. And that is where I think basically every recent ZZZ mechanic comes from. Hence the side objectives of Deadly Assault, hence Miasma, control skills, and the list goes on. And you'll notice that the center of a lot of these mechanics is defensive assist. And it's worth thinking about why that specifically is the answer that they're relying on.
They have literally nothing else they can do in the fucking game, bro. Because it's just every enemy has an invincible phase where they spam parries at you. That's this game's skill and challenge. Enemy goes invincible for 10 seconds and spams parryable attacks for 10 seconds. Can you parry all of them? And this is the truth about ZZZ. It's literally parry slop. The only difficulty any boss in this game has is going invincible for 20 fucking seconds and then spamming parry attacks on you. And you'll notice that in every single fucking encounter.
The easy answer is that it's the easy answer. The devs know exactly what they're handing you. Almost, emphasis on almost, everyone interacts with it in almost the same standardized way. It makes the game more enemy-sided without ever opening up the game to being unpredictable.
It makes the game dog shit and boring as fuck and legitimately some of the most like dumb shit ever. Because it truly is just like, bro, they did it like 20 times in a row. How does every boss have a 15-second iframe phase that spams like over 10 parryable attacks? Why does every boss have one of these in this game? Truly, I don't get it.
And in fairness, it does look very cool. The issue, if you consider it one, is that the game turns into play your team and also press defensive assist. And that's not super hard or interesting if you ask me.
Did he call it parry slot?
It's a reaction check, sure, but it's not a particularly hard one. Sometimes, even, it runs the risk of feeling too intrusive. To give you an example, Osu is a great game, and it's a lot of fun. But would I want to play segments of an Osu map interspersed with an action game? Not really. That's kind of how I feel about control skills in certain phases of recent bosses. It's neat and fun, but it almost feels too divorced from actually piloting my characters because it's just so standardized in how you interact with it.
This is what I mean. Guys, there's been at least like 7 or 8 bosses in a row that have had this, but he's not mentioning that there's been 7 or 8 bosses in a row. Like, truly, if we're at the point where we spam the same exact mechanic on like 8 bosses in a row, that's worth mentioning as like the devs are fucking bad, right? The devs are lazy as shit. The devs are uncreative. They don't know what the fuck they're doing if they spam the same mechanic 8 times in a row with 0 differentiations. But like,
Underneath everything mentioned is the fact that ZZZ is a gacha. Mechanics with real emergent depth, the kind where players start finding powerful things that the devs never planned for.
Like, why don't we mention that the devs have done this 4 million times?
Are not actually what a gacha wants. They want the game to feel more enemy-sided.
And this is also the other thing. I would just like to see more unilateral criticism that just doesn't look like it's kowtowing to the ZZZ community.
They don't want is to grow the web of interactions between your account and an encounter, because
look at how lightly he talked about one of the worst issues in ZZZ with this loose-ass, goofy-ass little Osu thing, right? Let's listen to how he talked about the problems in Wuthering Waves. Real quick, let's just review it.
Or swapping when you shouldn't have. For most players, it's just not worth salvaging. And to be clear, you can.
Just listen to this part about the rotations and the restart button.
You're playing around. Almost every character is imposing micro goals on their own rotation, and sometimes on other characters too. Which is why a WuWa fight that starts going wrong is so annoying to pull back.
Why are we talking about how a ZZZ fight where you simply mess up one fucking parry 2 minutes into a 3-minute fight because it's like they decided to put a parry sequence against every boss? Why are we talking about how frustrating that shit is? where like ZZZ, every single deadly assault boss has like in the last 30 seconds has a 20-second invulnerability phase where they spam 10 parry attacks on you. You got to hit all of them or your score's fucked. And you won't. Isn't that frustrating to have to clear after completing 60-70% of the fight to restart because of this slop? Because you need that guaranteed PP? Isn't that annoying? You can salvage it? Is it worth salvaging though, or should I just restart? Guys, how about this? How about you don't put in like this gimmicky garbage? And if there is going to be gimmicky garbage, how about we call it out appropriately instead of like, again, doing it unilaterally? Because this is just the proof over here. This is the only proof I need. We're willing to go this far talking about like making the rotation slot point. We don't even go like 20% of the way for ZZZ. When there are so many more like things you can say about how annoying it is to have to restart in DA, having to restart in Shiyu, restart in the middle of these fights. But we're out here talking about we messed up our own rotation, and so that's super annoying to us. But when the devs mess up our rotation, who cares?
Bosses. It's neat and fun, but it almost feels too divorced from actually piloting my characters, because it's just so standardized in how you interact with it.
This is how I know this was made for ZZZ players.
And underneath everything mentioned is the fact that ZZZ is a gacha. Mechanics with real emergent depth, the kind where players start finding powerful things that the devs never planned for, are not actually what a gacha wants. They want the game to feel more enemy-sided. What they don't want is to grow the web of interactions between your accounts and an encounter, because that web is unpredictable. And unpredictable player power is how you end up with something like Mono Ice, and how your perfectly tailored best-in-slot team ends up not being that. So they're boxed in by their own design.
Guys, this is the crazy thing, is that he just lied here. He just said all gacha developers don't want to give any like creative freedom to the player to design team comps, yet Wuthering Waves' best performing teams are quick swap ones, which the devs obviously don't design themselves. People find out quick swap rotations by themselves that deal more damage than the ones the devs are trying to get you to do. The devs have a rotation in mind when they make these teams, and then people find out ways to improve them via quick swap. And this dude just straight up said the devs don't want to do that when Kuro intentionally puts kits in the game that let you quick swap. I don't get, like, bro, we just had Hiyuki and Lucilla release that, like, he's just objectively wrong here, right? This isn't like a subjective take. I don't know what the fucking dude is saying. How can you tell me quick swap isn't intentional when you're literally told you don't lose the effect of this outro skill on swap? Oh, right. Every negative status team in the game doesn't lose their outro on swap, so they're meant to be used in quick swap. And then also WuWa patented their quick swap mechanic as well. But they don't have any, like, bro, they don't tell you how to quick swap. They don't tell you how to do it in the tutorial. They don't tell you how to do it in the training. It's just something you do because you decide you want to do it for fun. But it does more damage, too, so you get rewarded for it as well. So, yeah, I don't know what this guy's just... Let me replay this. I don't know what he's saying here.
Of interactions between your...
I didn't play that again.
Players start finding powerful things that the devs never planned for, are not actually what a gacha wants. They want the game to feel more enemy-sided. What they don't...
Proof? No, that's what Hoyo wants. Yeah, if you want any side to be, I'm invulnerable unless you pull the next unit. Unless you pull the newest unit, I'm invulnerable. If that's the enemy side you're talking about, then yeah, Hoyo wants that.
Don't want is to grow the web of interaction.
But let's just say it's Hoyo only. Let's not try to share the blame across the gacha space, brother. I know we're trying to defend ZZZ with every dying breath in this video, bro, but let's not share the blame for what Hoyo's doing to every other company. No, they don't deserve that.
Actions between your account and an encounter, because that web is unpredictable. And unpredictable player power is how you end up with something like Mono Ice, and how your perfectly tailored best-in-slot team ends up not being that. So they're boxed in by...
Okay, so this is what I've realized. I don't even think Mono Ice is a good example of what the fuck he's saying. What the fuck is he even saying here? Like, Mono Ice is like a forbidden team composition that the devs did not know was going to be... That did not have plan... Bro, the go-to team for Mono Ice was Sokaku, Lycon, and Ellen. And so putting Miyabi in, I don't feel like is some wild shit that, like, the devs weren't intending when, like... They all reduce, like, ice weakness, ice resistance, all of that. Lycon buffs ice damage, and then Miyabi comes in and does ice stuff. On top of all the ice buffs they give, so the ice team...
being that. So they're boxed in by their own design. They want the game to be enemy-sided, but the business model says otherwise. So a lot of that actually carries over to WuWa. This is also a game that wants you to feel strong and cinematic, that wants these characters' personalities to shine in combat. But WuWa started from a different place, or at least it felt like it did. WuWa wears its Souls-like inspiration pretty openly, and despite the fact that these days WuWa characters are out here doing, well, whatever this is, early on they genuinely felt a lot weaker relative to the enemies than anything in ZZZ did. You could very much see it in the sheer number of people getting dismantled at launch, and you can still
What is this retard saying? Wait, is he saying Jinsey felt weak? Wait, is he saying Jinsey felt like a... What the fuck? Are you guys on crack? Who said that? What is he even saying? I think this guy is just LARPing WuWa now. I see why he was scoring 4K with his Imeth teams. He has no idea what the fuck he's talking about. The flaw WuWa is trying to fix.
So a lot of that actually carries over to WuWa. This is also a game that wants you to feel strong and cinematic, that wants these characters' personalities to shine in combat. But WuWa started from a different place, or at least it felt like it did. WuWa wears its Souls-like inspiration pretty openly, and despite the fact that these days WuWa characters are out here doing, well, whatever this is, early on
That character was released a year ago. The first thing that I'm finding weird is that to talk about what WuWa's doing nowadays, we talked about a character released a year and 2 months ago. When it's nowadays, that she was released a year and 2 months ago. So like, I wouldn't use Cardathea as an example of nowadays simply based off that alone. That just seems a little bit weird.
Felt a lot weaker relative to the enemies than anything in ZZZ did.
And now they're saying Wuthering Waves early units felt weaker than anything ZZZ has ever put out. So any early WuWa unit felt worse than every ZZZ character. Can you guys hear the shit he's saying for a second over here and like tell me he's not biased? Are you non-sarcastically going to tell me this is not one of the most biased motherfuckers you've ever heard? Bro just said all of WuWa's early units feel way weaker than any ZZZ character ever made. Like, bro, have you played Anton? Are you serious? Wow. This community is... I see now what this is. This is somebody who is LARPing playing WuWa, glazing the fuck out of it, and he put out one of the worst WuWa hit pieces ever to glaze ZZZ the whole fucking time. I see what's going on now. Because, like, bro, how do you even say this statement?
Combat. But WuWa started from a different place, or at least it felt like it did. WuWa wears its Souls-like inspiration pretty openly, and despite the fact that these days WuWa characters are out here doing, well, whatever this is, early on they genuinely felt a lot weaker relative to the enemies than anything in ZZZ
Proof?
did. You could very much see it in the sheer number of people getting dismantled at launch, and you can still see some of that inspiration in the hologram mode.
Bro, these holograms got released at the start of Renacida. Bro, these holograms are like 2 years old. Wait, what the fuck? Is this video from 2000? Bro, is this video 2 years old? Bro, did he start editing this video two years ago and like finish now?
So what was the problem? Same as before, it comes back to one word: rotation slot. Over time, the meta developed, and dedicated players worked out two things at once. They worked out the best rotations, and they also worked out it's simply better to commit to your rotation and tank hits rather than try to avoid them. They also figured out that the parry system was mostly cosmetic. Yes, it damages the stagger gauge, but you already don't care to look at what the boss is doing, so it doesn't really matter.
Okay, so he called it rotation slop again, said parries don't matter even though parries give you concerto, and by hitting parries on your supports you can speed up your rotation to make your rotation faster. It's literally a skill check that they put in there. Dodging also gives you concerto too, so it's... Let me just disprove this live for you. Let's see how long it takes me to rotate on my shortkeeper if I just don't dodge versus me dodging.
Modulation.
Around 10 seconds. Let's see what happens here if I dodge, right?
you knew. Thanks for watching.
I literally just shaved off like 4 fucking seconds by dodging. Let me see if I can do it even faster.
In war with time.
That move is not dodgeable, unfortunately. That's still faster too. I wove in dodge cancels into my rotation. Now let's see if we can get the truly the fastest one ever.
Diminish. I engraft you new. Thanks for watching.
Literally, anyone that's played this game, at least somewhat in the end game, would understand that dodging and weaving in parries and all of this stuff is giga important on your supports and sub DPSs because it gives you so many resources and speeds up your rotation and gives you so much concerto. But this guy just said none of it matters. As he's showing off 4K scores in End State Matrix. He's telling you all these mechanics don't matter, they're meaningless, blah, 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 as he shows off 4K points in End State Matrix. This is why the analysis and the B-roll makes sense, because we've just proven this guy is just lying about the game. That's a caught moment right there. He just told you don't dodge, don't parry, it's all cosmetic, none of it matters, even though we just showed a like 4 to 5 second rotation time saving. With the wrong buff, and we don't know if he has limited. Whoa, Tats. Let's realize this for a second. He just lied about the game, and then he has bad B-roll too. Stop. You're at the point where you don't even... You're putting out a potential explanation for why his B-roll sucks. We've already established his B-roll does suck. You're putting out a... Well, maybe he wasn't actually that retarded, right? Or maybe he was... Maybe something else went wrong. But you're just pointing out like a possibility to help excuse why it's so bad. But it's bad. We've established that. And now he just lied about the game on top of it. I think he can appreciate what you're trying to do, but it's not good. I think we're beginning to realize now this video's a bit of a disaster.
Outside of holograms where bosses hit too hard to tank, the game turned completely player-sided. Actually engaging with an enemy moveset just wasn't worth it. Not when
No, bro. It's because you'd be out here scoring 3K points in End State Matrix. You don't know how to play this game.
you've got 25 seconds to fit everything into. So what did Kuro do about this? Much the same thing Hoyo did. They started shifting power into the enemies. You get bosses like Sentry Construct, which is a genuinely great boss, where landing a parry while it's airborne drags it back to the ground.
Bro, I was about to use some profanity. This motherfucker got released in 2025, bro! He got released in January 2025! This is like basically 2 years old! What the fuck? What do you mean Kuro's trying to solve the problem? They released this almost 2 years ago! How is that solving a current problem? Bro, he's like LARPing English now! This doesn't even make sense, bro! I'm sorry, why is there an old-ass 2-year-old boss here talking about solving a modern problem? That doesn't even make sense fundamentally. Is this a ChatGPT script?
So all of a sudden, there's a boss with a parry window that is core to the fight. It also has some attacks very worth dodging.
Bro! How we Did he just say that this boss, because it has an insta-kill parry attack, when, like, the Morning Ikes, who has a one-shot move, where if it fucking grabs you, you die, has been in the game since 1.0? Bro, this guy grabs you and you die instantly. Bro, this guy also has his, like, little... Bro, I need to just debunk all the actual bullshit. Bro, this is made for ZZZ players who want to shit on WuWa off of points that aren't real. And so, basically, there's no actual Wuthering Waves players that watch that fucking video. It's just ZZZ ones, and they're just seeing WuWa get fucking slapped, bro. And they're just like, yeah! Yeah! Finally! And the vid is just full of bullshit, bro. The vid is just full of shit. What the fuck? Bro, he's just lying, and then everyone doesn't even know how to play WuWa in his comment section. They're just agreeing with him. Bro, they're literally watching WuWa just get fucking lashed for fun by this guy as he, like, lies the entire video. And this is the biggest explanation. Let me show you what happens against this fucking Morning Ike's boss, bro. This shit is hilarious. Bro, so much goofy shit happens to you if you don't fucking dodge here. Yeah, hey, but I'm gonna pretend I'm a cosplay the video. I'm gonna cosplay being disabled. That's why we're gonna use Mornier. Bro, wait, they updated the arena. Oh shit! Let's just see what happens.
Some minor fixes will support.
Oh.
Are the stars.
Oh, wait, let's restart that. I think he's got 2 killer moves. Actually. Dude, the lighting in this fight looks insane. I might need to fight all the 1.0 holograms again. Wait, this looks insane. Let's see this.
Still stand. I don't want to disappoint you. The scent of blood leaf Burnham.
So yeah, guys, he's out here talking about Kuro trying to fix modern problems with a 2-year-old boss, and then he also proceeds to bring up points that are reflected by a 1-year-old boss. Or sorry, a 1.0 boss that was released 3 years ago. So the points he's bringing up here is negated by the 1.0 release version, which is...
And has a mechanic where it throws up a shield and recovers its own stagger gauge. I said the stagger gauge doesn't matter, but the moment a boss genuinely has annoying attacks and a way to deny your damage while it's free to move, it suddenly becomes very worth your time to stagger it. And since 2.0, they've kept up the pace on this. Hecate and her infamous parry sequence, the False Sovereign's absurd damage output, and Reactor Husk with its breakable parts and projectiles that you can reflect right back at it.
Can we just talk about the false equivalency of, like, this guy only comparing hologram fights in WuWa to, like, Deadly Assault and Shiyu defense in ZZZ? Like,
So did this work? Not exactly. These bosses do have their own unique properties, but those properties aren't prevalent enough to make you change your strategy on the way in, and they aren't intrusive enough to make you genuinely think on the fly.
You fight these bosses one time.
And if something does go wrong, well, it's easier to just restart. So is the fix to make bosses even more intrusive? Also, not exactly, and this is kind of the trap. WuWa is still a game where a cleanly executed rotation vastly outdamages.
I get what's going on. We're LARPing that there's a problem with the combat. And the entire video is worded in a way where we're pretending, we're like gaslighting the viewer into pretending there's an actual problem that needs to be fixed. There's no actual problem. He's just making a bunch of shit up and gaslighting you into thinking there's a problem. What is the issue? Like, truly, after everything, what is the problem he's talking about? What is the flaw he's trying to fix? What's the flaw?
Is one where something went wrong. So it's genuinely mechanically correct.
Like, the only thing that's a flaw here is the B-roll. What the fuck? Okay, so there's a difference between, like, B-roll and then also the most random team comps you've ever seen that don't work if you've read the kits a single time. Right? There's a difference between bad B-roll and you would never run this team if you read anything that the characters do a single time. Maybe he has sequences. Let's stop giving the benefit of the doubt to people that haven't earned it yet. Can we do that, guys? Can we stop giving the benefit of the doubt to people that haven't earned it? Please? Because I've seen enough for me to say this is user error and there's not like some hidden reason for this. And also, I don't think this is an S3 Cardathea because he has 4.2k points. With 30 seconds left. I don't think it's an S3 Cardathea. That's my personal take.
To focus almost entirely on completing your rotation, making slight timing adjustments and dodging only where strictly needed, which creates this kind of paradox. More interaction actually makes WuWa players feel like they aren't playing the game, even though the rotation-only version that they want to play is massively stripped down from what the combat could end up being.
Wait, what the fuck did he just say, bro?
Vastly outdamages one where something went wrong. So it's genuinely mechanically correct to focus almost entirely on completing your rotation, making
You can literally do rotations faster than they're listed out by parrying and dodging properly. And so, if you interact with the enemy mechanics, you're able to do the rotations faster and increase your DPS. What is so hard to understand? I think I've said this like 30 times. Dodges and concerto, dodges and parries give you concerto. The faster you get concerto, the faster your rotations are. The faster your rotations, the faster your DPS. So interacting with dodges and parries increase your DPS. What's the problem here? That's the point he doesn't understand. So he's saying there's a problem that doesn't exist. Because he cannot see the link between dodging and parrying increasing his DPS, he's saying it's a problem because he can't see the link. He said parries were cosmetic. I've seen it now. Okay. I see no more need to watch this video. Because I've reached a sort of like impasse over here. And it really, honestly, this entire part for me was trying to discover why he's saying there's a problem. This man cannot understand, at a baseline, what dodges and parries in Concerto, how they interact with the rest of the game. And he's like sort of consigned himself to, the only way to play Wuthering Waves outright is to look up a rotation on a Google Sheet or Pridewin and never play anything else. That's what this guy is saying. The only way to play Wuthering Waves is this. Look up a rotation online, follow it to a T, muscle through hits, and pretend, and that's the only way that you can do it. And if you're doing anything else, you're wrong. But that's just not true when quick swap exists in the game, when dodges and parries, as I've shown you, speed up your support's rotation dramatically. He has a completely misunderstood understanding of Wuthering Waves. It's a completely bullshit misinformation-fueled take, and it's done, unfortunately, to uplift ZZZ during a time where ZZZ is doing really bad. And so, essentially, we've just spread misinformation about Wuthering Waves the entire video to make ZZZ seem better than it actually is. While also minimizing and refusing to actually get into, knee-deep, the real problems with Zenless Zone Zero. Now, I didn't do enough. I didn't talk enough shit about ZZZ. I didn't critique it enough at the start of the video. I'm so glad I did now after seeing what we've seen so far, because this is the most imbalanced, truly, one of the most inauthentic, imbalanced, one-sided critiques I've ever seen. It is not, like, this question does not get answered by the video. I think that this WuWa profile picture is cosmetic, and this guy's a LARPer. And I've shown you objectively where all of his arguments are wrong and proven wrong by something in-game. Not for me. And hopefully, there haven't been a lot of people swayed by the misinformation that you're seeing all throughout this vid, because there is so much of it. Let me know what you all thought. Peace out.